Fun.
Morning, everyone. Welcome. We will get kick-started very soon. Right, I'm gonna get kick-started because I know we've got a lot to jam into this session. So welcome. My name is Holly. I'm the MD of BEMA. Yeah, welcome to the launch of our latest report, Charities in Need: The State of Website Performance in the Third Sector. I'm really proud of this one. It's something that has kind of, one of our 20 different BEMA councils has been really involved in it, so that's fantastic. And it's been, a real collaboration between BEMA members. So I'm going to get my thank yous in really early. I thought that was the best thing to do. So firstly, I want to say a huge thank you to Pixeled Eggs, who are the digital experience agency and were responsible for this happening. So responsible for the concept, all of the research, all of the analysis, all of the auditing, and also to Engine. So another fantastic member of BEMA who have been incredibly supportive in providing the design and editing and all of the, kind of project management element. So a huge thank you to both of you. We literally, it wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. So before I introduce, how we're going to run the session and the fantastic panelists we've got today, as always, I just wanted to give everyone a few words on BEMA in case you're not as familiar with us as you should be. So BEMA represents digital talent wherever it is. We're the largest digital and tech community in the UK. We're a membership organisation and we're made up of agencies of all different types and sizes, in-house teams in brands, tech companies, little and large, charities, and we'd love more of you to join, and universities, and really everything in between. The common theme is that everyone is, has an ambition to create outstanding digital experiences. And as part of the BEMA community, we're about driving the future of digital. So we do that across many different events and programs, far too many to mention here, but I thought I'd just mention, the values that we speak to. So they are innovation, so developing knowledge, case studies, best practice to support that innovation, craft, so, encouraging people to excel in the craft and really pushing it forward, talent, so really skilling up current generations, but also future generations of talent. And we do a lot of work with schools to do that. Leadership, so supporting our leaders to overcome their challenges, of which there have been quite a few over the last 6 months, and helping them grow their business. And then sustainability and inclusion and diversity. So supporting our members to be fairer, more sustainable, more diverse, more interesting companies and organizations. So as I said, if you would like to know more, please come and speak to us. I'm Holly Hall at bema.co.uk, or chat to any of the team. We'd love to get you more involved. So to today, how it's going to work. So I am going to first hand you over to our co-chair of our Charities Council, Julia Merlo, who is also Head of User Research and Design at Citizens Advice. So I'll do that in a second. She's just going to talk to you very briefly about the Charities Council and how it started and what they do. She's then going to hand over to Mark Iremonger, who is the chair of Pixeled Eggs. And as I said, they've really, brought this concept to life. And he is going to share a presentation. He's going to share the key findings of the report, and also a little bit on, behind the scenes, how they did it. And then we're going to move on to a panel discussion, absolutely looking at, getting the panelists' reactions to some of those key findings, but also focusing on the, you know, positive actions and their recommendations, having been or in this digital journey. You know, we really want to hear from, you know, some of the amazing charities we've got on, you know, their recommendations and their personal experiences. And on that panel we have, so Chris Flood, who is our other co-chair of our Charities Council, and he is also Content Strategy Lead at Cancer Research UK. Lucia Das Neves, who is Head of Marketing and Comms at Reach Volunteering, and Carenza Morton, who is Communications Manager at the Ellen MacArthur Trust. Right, that's me. I would love to hand over to Julia.
Thanks, Holly. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. So as Holly mentioned, my name is Julia. I work at Citizens Advice, and I am the co-chair of the BIMA Charities Council, together with Chris, who is also on the panel today. So I'm going to very briefly just tell you a couple of notes about the BIMA Charities Council. So Chris and I founded the BIMA Charities Council a couple of years ago. And we were coming from our experience of digital transformation at Cancer Research UK. And we wanted to help influence the conversation around what good digital could look like for the third sector and for charities. And from our point of view, we've always thought that it was about more than just technology tools and more than about software, and even about more than just your digital presence, but that it's something that fundamentally makes you look at your organization's DNA, at its ways of working, at its mindset and its culture. And I think that many of the insights that you will start to hear about today from Mark in a minute validate that and show the importance of thinking about digital as a something that has to involve the whole organization and its ways of working, rather than just as a one-off project. But the other reason as well that we set up the council was that we thought there was a great potential for best-in-class digital agencies and digital brands to collaborate with charities and to share expertise and to share knowledge. So the board of the council has always been as close as possible to a 50-50 split between representatives of the charity sector and representatives of digital agencies and brands. And indeed, both Pixeldex and Engine are members of our council. And so one of the reasons that Chris and I are both very excited about presenting this report today, and that the council is very excited, is that it makes that collaboration tangible, and it shows that there is a big potential for sharing knowledge and expertise. And finally, before handing over to Mark, who is going to start taking you through some of the insights from the report, I also wanted to make sure to say that we very much don't think that this is us done, so that this is sort of the conclusion of the work looking at third sector's digital presence, but we very much hope that the report can be the start of a conversation about how we can be more sophisticated at our digital presence, and ultimately how we can evolve the way that we meet user needs and get ourselves into a place where we can respond faster to those changing user needs. And of course, now more than ever, in the current normal in which we're living now, that feels like something that is very relevant. And if you're interested in knowing more about the council, or if you're interested on hearing about becoming part of the council yourselves, please feel free to reach out. You can find me on Twitter or on LinkedIn, or either myself or Chris, and we'd love to talk to you. And with that, I'll just hand over to Mark, who is going to properly kick off and start sharing the report.
Okay, great. So hopefully you guys can all see my screen now. It's been an incredible journey to get to here. This all started in a pub. If you can remember what being in a pub is like, chatting to somebody else. I haven't done that for a long, long time. But it happened all the way back in October when myself and Sepas, the CEO of Pixeldex, were talking about some of our charity clients. And with my strategy hat, I was trying to understand some of the drivers and some of the kind of key insights into the industry. And what I found was there's almost no data relating to digital about the charity sector. And so we sat down and I first spoke to Holly and then Chris about the idea of doing this audit way back in November. This is a pre-COVID idea with a lot of the work happening all the way through from March to now to produce this report. And I think this report perhaps is more important now because of everything that has happened since we first talked about this report. So we really hope it's going to be a tool for you. My personal ambition is that it's going to drive conversations within charities about digital, particularly their websites. And also, I hope, provide some insight and data that people can use to pursue a digital agenda within their organization. So to get going on this, it was really difficult to kick it off in some ways because, you know, if we just look at England and Wales, there are 160,000 charities who share a combined income of £78 billion. Now, what is most defining about this group of companies or businesses or organizations is that they are incredibly diverse. So to be a registered charity, you need to have a charitable purpose for public benefit. So it ranges from everything from religion to human rights. To give some perspective, that 78 billion income is about the same as the automotive manufacturing industry in the UK. So it's a very big sector. So you can understand this graph here. If you look at that red line, what it's showing is on the left-hand side here, this little black bar here represents 947 charities. And in this case, they share, they have an income of between 10 million and 32 million. And this here on the right shows that this bar here represents 16 billion pounds of combined income. So it doesn't really matter about the detail on this chart, but what's interesting is the shape of these two curves. So this block here relates to this block here. What's interesting about the shape of charities in the UK is that a very small number of charities share the bulk of the income. So to give you a perspective, these bars down here represent about 0.7% of all of the registered charities, but they are responsible for about 2/3 of the total income in charity in the UK. The biggest one in here, down at the bottom, is represented by the British Council, which is a registered charity with about an income of £1 billion. The largest one in the data set, the largest charity, is Save the Children UK. They'd be represented here with about £970 million. The other thing about the sector is that there's a lot of charities who share very little income at all. A huge number of them, very little income. All of these charities here have less than £100,000 of income, and you can see again it's really, really weighted here. So when we were thinking about the audit, we had to think long and hard about how to tackle this. And so what we have done is focus on small and mid-sized charities. So all of the charities in this audit have more than £100,000 worth of income and less than 10 million. I've ended up thinking about this as what I've called the Goldilocks zone. It represents about 1/3 of the total income in the UK that charities are responsible for. And it's about 20% of the total registered charities in the UK. So this is our Goldilocks zone, which are the small and mid-sized charities which this audit has really focused on. So there's 33,000 of them that share about £26 billion worth of income. Now, it was really important when we did this that the method was transparent, it was repeatable, and it was transparent and repeatable, really. And was large enough to give us insights into the sector as a whole. So our method was pretty straightforward. We started with a randomized set of 700 charities, which we pulled from a database called Charities. Charities are great because they aggregate publicly available government data from 4 different sources and presented in different ways through an API, which is where we originally got our data set from. So we did this by pulling sets of charities at random of different incomes. Then we went on to create what we called our master set of charities. There were 411 of these, and mostly we manually curated that first random set to exclude some specific kinds of organizations that we were not concerned about in this audit. So this would be things like independent schools, school funding, religious organizations, parishes, things like this, and small trusts who are privately investing, so have very little need for a website. So all of those got pulled out, which left us with our 411 in total. Then we looked at the 411 websites and looked to see what kind of platform they were built on. There's lots of detail about this in the report, but we were interested to see, are these charities using a software or a site as a service like Wix or Squarespace? Are they using off-the-shelf themed websites? Or indeed, if it's not either of those, we've classed them as a bespoke website. After that, we wanted to look at technology. How well are these websites performing from a technology point of view? And not just from a desktop perspective, but from a mobile perspective as well. For this, we used Google Lighthouse, which is an online service tool, developer tool provided by Google. And it's a pretty automated process for us, but it gives us feedback across the 4 dimensions, which are detailed in the report. And finally, what was very important was usability. What are the user experiences like on these websites? How well are charities supporting people who want to find out more about the charity? But also, how well are supporter journeys supported? How well do the websites support beneficiaries? So we've used a very standard SUS system usability scale, and then we've modified it to look specifically at information seekers, supporter journeys, and beneficiary journeys within a website. So these all rolled into a big database. We ended up with about 20,000 different data points running across these 411 charities. And this is what's fed the report that you can download, I believe, immediately after this presentation. All of that got number crunched and ended up going into a simple grading system, A, B, C, D, F. Everyone has asked me, why is there no E? The reason there's no E is because it was originally A, B, C, F for fail. But actually, we needed to show a bit more insight into the fails, so we added the D as the project developed. So that's why there's no E, in case you're wondering. Anything below 70% is a fail. So Ds and Fs are very poor or terrible experiences from a website perspective. C is okay, which means this is not a great experience, this is not a great website, but it's okay. So all of that ends up meaning that all these charities end up with a scorecard that looks a little bit like this. You can see these in the case studies that are included in the report. It's also possible for us to produce a scorecard for you, so you can see specifically how your website matches to all of the data in the report. If you do want to do something like that, get in touch with me and I'll see what we can do. So that's the scorecard. So onto the grades. This is the overall view. What you're looking at here is the size of the circles represents the proportion or the number of awarded grades. And on the face of it, these aren't great. You know, what can we learn from this? There's not enough A's, not enough B's, quite a lot of C's, and too many D's and F's. So could do better might be what we can draw from this, with a whopping 41% have failed by these standards here. But for me, things start to get more interesting when we dig into the data. Now, I talked about technology versus usability. What we've got here is we start to see some real insight. All of the C's in technology mean that generally it suggests that charities are doing quite well from a technology perspective. But when we look at usability, charities are really polarized. Usability has more F grades than anything else in the report, but also they've got quite a lot of A and B grades. So what this suggests to me is perhaps it's more polarized because we have charities who are better at being user-centric than other charities. And you can really see the spread of this on this chart here. What we're looking at here is the technology dimension on the left and the usability on the horizontal axis. So it's this kind of spread you see here that is really showing us how spread out usability scores are, which really shows that this is something that charities are struggling with. Whereas with technology, generally, we've got 64% of charities getting over the kind of pass bar here. So they're doing better at technology than usability. Another key insight comes when we start to look at the income of charities against usability goals. So what we're looking at here is we've really got two fascinating things that come out of this. The first is this one here. This left column represents the low income charities. So these charities in the audit have an income of between about 100 and 300,000 pounds. And what we've got is 47%, nearly half of them scoring an A or B grade for usability, which is great. And then on the other side, our high income charities, we've got about the same amount scoring the worst grades, Ds and Fs. And so what this tells us is that for whatever reason, low income charities are providing better user experiences than their high income counterparts. Now, these high income charities in the audit will typically have between 2.7 and 10 million pounds income. So they're different kinds of organizations operating in different ways. Why this is so, I think, is going to be a great discussion with the panel. Perhaps these low income charities have much simpler ambitions that are easier to communicate, but looking forward to the discussion on that. So low income charities deliver better user experiences. Another interesting insight here around usability comes with this slide here. So we're looking at the 4 different usability criteria, and that pink one has what I call the shoulder. That pink shoulder suggests that there are a chunk of charities who are failing to communicate their core proposition online, which is interesting. Yes, it scores high over here, but look at the shoulder here. So there's a chunk of charities that are not sufficiently well explaining what it is they actually do, what their core purpose is. And the other thing that we see here is that in general, the websites tilt slightly towards supporter journeys, which is this here, compared to beneficiaries, which is the slightly darker curve here. So what this tells us is that websites in general are tilted more towards charity supporters rather than charity beneficiaries when it comes to usability scores. What we've got here is a breakdown of the platforms that the charity websites are built on. Again, this is some really quite interesting things here. What you have is bespoke is this dark area here, but what's really surprising about it is when we look at the high income charities, some of these high income charities, and let's remember this is 2.7 to 10 million pounds of income, are still using services as a software platforms. So that might be something like Wix, as well as off the peg themes for their websites. So I was really surprised to see this because I'd have thought at this scale they would all be designing and building web experiences really focused on not just their users, but also tailored to the needs of their organization. And at the other end of the scale, it was surprising to see that so many of these low-income charities are also investing in bespoke websites. And it's not a surprise to see that we've got a lot more of them using SaaS or themes to get their websites online. It's hard to understand why we would see this top right circle. One question it raises for me, again, maybe for the panel, is whether this is because digital is not a high enough priority, but it's something to get onto with the panel. Next up, mobile. Mobile is a huge theme that comes out of the audit. Desktop user experiences significantly outperform mobile. Now, if we look at this graph here, what we're looking at is the vertical axis is desktop scores, and the horizontal axis is mobile scores. So what we want to see is everybody up here in this top right, where they're at least passing their usability desktop and mobile scores. But what we're actually seeing is that this group here, 29% of all the charities in the audit are failing their mobile tests. So they're failing mobile tests. So we have charities with websites that are doing reasonably well with desktops, but doing very poorly in mobile. Now, is this a problem? For me, it really is a problem. This chart on the left is not in the report, but it's a stat counter indication of web traffic. And you can see that red and black line represent mobile and desktop traffic. So they're roughly half and half. Now, in my experience, a lot of charity websites can often have a lot more mobile traffic than desktop traffic these days. So it's something really to think about. When we look at the data that we've produced, you can see that overall, generally, charities' mobile websites are performing about 10% worse than their desktop equivalents. So again, there's a good discussion around, well, why is this happening in this day and age? Okay, so that's mobile. They underperform by at least 10%. Another point worth mentioning is of those 411 websites that were audited, 9%, nearly 1 in 10, had no mobile website at all. So this data relates to those that did have a mobile website. 1 in 10 didn't have a mobile version of their website. There are some clues when we dig into the data around why mobile scores might be lower. What we're looking at here is a big spike around SEO. These are technology scores. And then another spike here around best practice. But what we've got here, which I'm calling the performance slug, is showing us that there's a lot of charities who are failing Google's Lighthouse audit for performance. And of course, that's a key metric for mobile. So I think what we can say looking at this is that charities have really grabbed the nettle around content and SEO, which is no surprise when you look at a lot of the marketing discussion and the focus on SEO and content, which is very important. But there's a lot more around some of the technical best practice and performance of the website, which is a kind of the much more technical side of website development. But for me, that speaks to why one reason why we might be seeing poor mobile performance. So that was a really quick whiz. I'm under strict orders to get through this really quickly. There is lots of data in this report. There's 60 pages of it. That includes not just the data, aggregated data that we've produced, but also there are a set of recommendations about what you can do as a charity to help you use this report. There's also a couple of case studies that show some great examples of where charities have acted to improve their websites, and also perspectives, brilliant perspectives from charity leaders that you can read and enjoy at their leisure. We really hope that this is going to be a useful tool for you all, that will raise standards and awareness and hopefully help to drive some conversations in charities about what they are up to. So that's a quick whiz through the report. We're going to switch to the panel now, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we're going to open it up for debate. If you have been asking questions, we will make sure that we cover those as well. So please don't be shy of using chat to put some questions to us as a panel. So to kick off, I thought usability is one of the key themes that comes through in this audit, where charities are falling behind. Chris, I wonder if you might kick off by giving us some perspectives on why that might be.
Yeah, I mean, I think as you kind of alluded to, one of the big things is the kind of variance in the scores, right? When it kind of comes to usability, and I think I think there could be a bunch of reasons why usability is so kind of up and down in this report. I think above all else, usability really speaks to the need of involving your users and involving your users properly, not just giving kind of lip service to it, actually using them in co-design, using them to build your products and your services. And kind of in my experience, if you do that, and if you're properly user focused, then you'll end up with a good user experience. And if you don't, then you won't, right? But equally, I also think there's something here around process a little bit. Like I think kind of considering how long digital has been around, there are still a lot of people who see building a website as a creative whirlwind that you can't possibly wrap a process around because it can only be delivered through inspiration. And there's another group of people who think actually the only way you can build a website is by building a huge tight process around it where you can't be flexible, you can't change, and you have to do these big bang kind of releases. And actually I think kind of today that's not true. Like actually, disciplines like UX, like content design has given us such a good playbook on what best practice is for usability. And then, newer disciplines like service design are helping us figure out how you make that best practice scale. And kind of, like in my experience, if you follow that best practice, then 9 times out of 10, you'll get a good website. And if you ignore it, then 9 times out of 10, you'll get a bad one. So I guess kind of one assumption I'd have is whether charities who have been able to be at that high end of the scale have actually been able to base their site on the needs of their real users, and then also figured out how to deliver on those needs in a way that's consistent with the right amount of process that I guess works for them as an organization.
Great. I mean, building on that, one of the things that strikes me is I was certainly surprised at how many of the websites that we looked at were bespoke. So not themes and not service as a software as a service. So with that in mind, I kind of take the leap that charities are likely to be working with digital partners or groups of freelancers and experts or agencies to produce their websites. Have you any insight into what works in terms of usability when working with a digital partner?
Yeah, I mean, I think the clue there is in the phrase partner, right? is actually, what a proper partner should do is to help an organization understand the importance of this stuff and give them that best practice kind of guidance and technology to help them translate those needs onto the website. And actually, I think what a service provider would do, say, as opposed to a proper partner, is they build some tech and then throw it over the fence. And I think really the key thing for me is, and I've worked as an agency side, I've worked in the charity sector, I've worked on the brand side, and whatever side of that kind of equation you're on, actually, there's commitment and partnership needed on both sides, because a partner needs to take the time to properly understand the charity and their needs. And the charity needs to take the time to be properly committed in a way of working that, perhaps puts those needs of the audience first, which can be a bit uncomfortable when you get to it first. And actually that does mean effort, and it does mean compromise on both sides. So, I'd say charities shouldn't be afraid of challenging how a partner is approaching work in the context of, is this doing the best thing for my beneficiaries? Is it doing the best thing for my supporters? Is it doing the best thing for the people who need our services? And equally, a partner should be really comfortable using data and evidence to explain why they've made those decisions. And actually, I think one of the key things for me is always making it a conversation of equals. And I think sometimes when you talk about partnerships, it isn't really a partner, because there can be a bit of a power imbalance there if a charity feels they're not able to challenge an agency or a partner or whoever, or the partner feels that they're not able to kind of push and challenge back and push the charity to really do the thing that's best for their audience, however uncomfortable that might feel.
Great, thank you for that. There's a lot of questions piling up. I'm going to dig into those, but just before I do that, Lucia, I just wondered if there was anything you wanted to add around this kind of wide variance we've seen in usability scores.
Thank you, Mark. I think one of the things we've thought deeply about in Reach is how we put users at the centre, and I think Chris kind of alluded to it, picking up on the different priorities that your organisation has, and some of the research suggests that challenge around: are we here? You know, is our website there? Are our services there for our supporters, for our beneficiaries? And I think there's a real challenge in marrying up those different needs. So there are some deep questions to ask yourself there. I also think there's something about the strategic understanding of the role of digital. We've moved on a lot, but there's still a lot of work to be done on how digital can really transform the services that we're delivering to beneficiaries, the way we go out there in the world generally. And I think that means having a strategic view of digital at both a board level and at every layer of the organisation, and bringing all those together. And I think thinking about the large organisations versus smaller in terms of income, I think some smaller organisations may have managed to bring together in quite an agile way that vision across their whole organisation. A bit harder if you're larger, and if you have these bigger teams very focused perhaps on their particular user group. So those are some of my observations.
Great. So I'm going to dig into a question from the audience here, from Rob Curie. Does the report or the panel have any insight into how charities are leveraging tech to drive their web traffic usage and raise their profile? For example, Google Ad Grant. So do any of you, anything to speak to that question? Do any of you have experience of using tech specifically to leverage, to drive traffic or usage?
Mark, we've certainly at Reach, we've used Google Ad Grants. I have to be honest, I think one of the things that challenged us to begin with was the resource and the time to really get to grips with what we needed to do there. And I was always very conscious that in the private sector, there may be a little bit more money being able to flow into that. You might have someone who's dedicated to do it. And we've had a lot of success, I'll be honest, with volunteers who've come on board with some expertise, some skill, and who've taken a dedicated approach at using Google Grants to increase the flow of traffic to our website. And I'd recommend that. I mean, obviously, Reach Volunteering, that's our bent, but there are plenty of people who are really willing to give their time and help.
Great, that's really useful. So, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, particularly when you look at the audit, it's clear that a lot of charity websites are not doing so well on some key technical performance indicators from Google Lighthouse audit. Karenza, do you have any view on kind of how much responsibility perhaps digital partners should be taking for what we're seeing in these scores?
Hi everyone. So our background, we worked with a digital partner called Studio Republic, who we continue to work with, who built us a new website last year. And that point because we built a site in 2017 on WordPress, but basically for the 2 years that site existed, it didn't get evolved in any way. It basically from its final day, it was the same as it was on day one pretty much. So we identified that a new site was going to be pretty important in us actually achieving some of our business objectives over the next 3 years. So we partnered up with Studio Republic, and I guess from our perspective, we went into it with pretty low knowledge within the organization. I mean, I'm the communications manager. We also had a marketing executive who'd had a bit of experience working with websites before. But in terms of actually needing to be guided through the process of actually making sure that our new site was fit for purpose and user-centric in the way that has been discussed already, we really kind of relied on the partner to help us through that process. and actually think about what our journeys needed to be and what our priorities needed to be, so that the new site, you know, was fit for purpose in a way that the old site maybe wasn't. Over the past year, this time last year, we were knee deep in that project, and we launched the site at the end of December. You know, 9 months on, I would say that we are now at a point where we've maybe acquired some of the knowledge that we didn't have in-house last year. We've got a bit more of an opinion on things. So I think to start with, in terms of you know, where we were at, actually the partner probably did take a lot of the responsibility, because we didn't have the knowledge to maybe push back or ask questions that we didn't know to ask. Whereas 9 months further down the road, that's changed. And I think that goes back to what Chris was saying earlier about the value of partnership. You know, we very much see our relationship with Studio Republic as something that is evolving the site. We're not looking at, you know, we've not looked at it as website development. We're looking at it as actually this ongoing investment in the site. And we're not a big charity. You know, we fit into the upper middle category in the categories that Mark talked about just now. But we have identified that the budget we do have available, actually the value is in making sure that the two user journeys that we prioritized from the outset, which was trying to get more young people to come on a sailing trip, which is what we do, and donating, were the two sort of priorities for us and the most important things. We didn't have a capacity to do regular giving digitally on our previous site. So when we set out our brief for Studio Republic, it was very much about actually how do we get more young people on trips and how do we improve our donation journey, and they were our priorities. And then since then we've evolved the site and worked in partnership with them to you know, make sure that actually the site is continuing to reflect the needs of the charity.
Okay, thanks for that. There's quite a few questions here. Peter, you asked if we can give some examples of best in show charity sites. There are a couple of case studies, one of which is Ellen MacArthur Cancer Trust in the report, so you can find those there. And Jessica, do you have any sense of whether as a sector we are performing worse overall than the private sector in terms of quality and performance? Now, it's a great question, Jessica. We haven't audited another sector in this way. The methodology and the approach is very transparent. We've taken a lot of effort to create a methodology that is repeatable. But having spent the last 6 to 8 months doing this, I don't think we'll be doing another sector for a while. Anecdotally, working in many different sectors, certainly I would see there is a lag. I'm sure that it will vary by sector, but I'm very comfortable that there are sectors out there who will be getting a lot more Bs and a lot more Cs in a lot more places than we are in charity. We have time perhaps for one more question. I'm just scanning through the Q&A. If we don't address your question now, don't worry, we will try to address all the questions in a little follow-up after this. But what I might do is ask the panel if there was one thing that you could recommend to our audience that you think would help them to raise standards of websites in their organizations. If any of you have that kind of one thing that you would recommend to people listening in.
I can go. I think I kind of touched on it before, but just user testing, really, and kind of getting your users involved as quickly and as in depth as possible. And there are ways of doing that kind of on the cheap, if you like, if budget is an issue. So, you know, back pre-COVID, when we wanted to do it at Cancer Research UK, we'd quite often go up the road to one of our shops and just chat to people, for example. You know, or now you could get in touch with people over Zoom, or you know, use remote tools like kind of Hotjar, or even kind of some of the tools that are outlined in the report. But actually doing the user research and then getting the results of that research in front of the people who really own the website, own the budget, for me is the thing that makes the biggest difference. Because, you know, in my experience, if I'm saying, you know, there's issues with our website, that's never going to be as powerful as the people who rely on the website to kind of use our services, to donate, to give us money, saying, you know, I'd really love to support you in this way, but your website just makes it really difficult for me. That's a slightly different shift in argument, and in my experience, user research helps to bring that to life a little bit more.
So user research, one way or the other, however you can. Corenza?
Yeah, so I think one of the big flips for us was looking at our site in terms of what users want, which is what we've talked about a lot, as opposed to what we think that they want. So I think the thing for me is actually really identifying what you want each user to do at the end of a journey, and actually asking what difference is that going to make to the organization. Because I think there's a danger with websites that actually you end up putting lots of stuff on there that you think people want, but actually that page never gets looked at, or they end up at a dead end. And you know, there's no purpose for that content or experience on the site. So actually being able to nail down what you want at the end of each user journey, and what difference is that going to make, because fundamentally then you've got a reason for it to be there.
Great. So understanding what users really need, rather than what the organization needs them to do, and trying to align the two. Lucia?
Thanks, Mark. So I mean, echoing the previous two speakers, I think starting every journey about what's going to happen on your website, every content journey too, with what are the user needs? What do we need? What do they need from this? Really important, I think. And I saw there was a question in the chat around how we make the case for everyone's happy to invest in content, but not so much in someone to do the other stuff. Well, I think if you start the content conversation and with your user needs, you'll find that some of it is about someone to do the content, but some of it's also about the other things people need in that experience and in that journey. And I'd add another thing as well, which is I think in an organization, you must ask yourself, what is the role of digital in our service at every level and strategically, and really making sure that you've got the backing in an organization of the board, perhaps having a digital trustee or someone who can understand the real true value and potential of the web and of a website in your service, for your service users and for your supporters and for everyone else. I think that's really important too.
Great, thank you. I know we're very pushed for time. I expect Holly to jump in any minute, but does anyone, because we haven't mentioned it at all, have a 10-second contribution around COVID and its impact on how your organization is looking at your website?
Definitely, I could jump in, Mark, and say that we've been looking at how we can provide our service, what we can add, change, modify, do with content for our service in the context of COVID. And we recruited actually a user researcher who's a volunteer, someone who was on furlough, etc., and who helped us go on a journey and just really quickly test and learn. I think Chris was mentioning test and learn, and we were really quickly doing that, and it made a real difference, and we made some real changes within a kind of 6 to 8 week period. And what we're seeing is that lots of charities are having to now take their service quickly online, modify their service. They're recruiting volunteers through us, but they're also, I'm sure, going out to look for partner agencies to do that. And many of them are the smaller organizations. They're in their community and they're suddenly having to deliver something very differently.
Great. Anything else from anyone else? No, all right. Well, I think we are getting, we've got 10 minutes actually. So I've been looking at the wrong timer. So I'm just having a quick look through the Q&A here, which I think we've covered off. So maybe this is one for all three of you. From Allegra. Design a website for a charity. Designing a website for a charity means involving many different teams, which is quite right. Often these teams have different internal objectives, for example, the fundraising, communications and education, and different targets. in your experience, how do you manage to bring together these internal, different internal groups, so you have different targets and objectives together around what should be a single user experience in a website? Anyone want to have a go at that? Corenza, you look like you're...
I was going to say, I mean, I think that's a really interesting one to explore, because we didn't have teams per se. We had 2 people basically leading on the project, and we're a small organization. We've got 15 full-time staff. So actually our knowledge is pretty good across the different teams. And when we really needed them, you know, when we really needed to go and have those conversations about what was required, then we did that. But it wasn't that actually they were as involved in the process as maybe we should have done, and actually how much I'd like it to be going forward. But one of the most interesting things about that was resolving some of the internal battles really around the use of language, and again, things that we talk about in-house that they would want to see on the website, and you're going, but that's not what the user wants to see. If you're a stranger coming to this website, you don't want, this is not the language you're going to use. This is not the way you're going to search for stuff. And actually trying to overcome some of those internal battles, again, with the support of the partner, to really hammer home, this has to be user-led. We have to be answering a solution, or finding a solution to how people are going to find the information that we want them to find, or how they're actually going to take the action we want them to take. And they were probably some of the hardest conversations that we had. We got everyone on board, and you know, I think people now see the site and see the value of it, and see the increase in traffic, and see the increasing engagement that we're getting from the people that we you know wanted to get it from. But yeah, trying to sell that dream before any reality kicked in was an interesting challenge.
Great. Do you think, or does anyone think that external digital partners, experts have a role to play in this, or is this much more about internally lining up the organization?
I mean, I think it's a bit of both, right? I think, you know, I think this maybe speaks to some of the comments Julia made up top about what we saw as a role of digital when we founded the council, because actually digital is about organizational transformation in my mind, right? And actually what you're trying to do is to change how the organization operates, to move away from those silos. And actually, I think the role that partners have is, you know, they're able to take that, you know, that 10,000-foot view, if you like, and actually kind of, you know, as a digital professional working in a charity, I'm, you know, when I'm talking about silos, I'm still part of a silo, right? You know, I'm still part of a team in an org chart, but actually what a partner's able to do is to come in there and perhaps take that step back and give that outside perspective. So I feel actually the role of a good partner will be able to kind of help you become more comfortable identifying and calling out these kind of issues when they come, and also helping bring a bit of clarity based on some of their experiences, perhaps working with other organizations, because every organization goes through those challenges to some degree or another. And I think a partner coming in can help an organization feel that they're not alone and they can change, which I think can be really beneficial.
Great. Before I move on to another area, Lucia, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I just completely concur actually with Corenza and Chris. A while back when we were looking at our own service user journey and thinking about what do our service users need, we brought someone in, and actually what was clear was we brought our team together, each of us with our different focus in our different silo. Even though we're a small organization, that means we've just got one person in each silo sometimes. And once we sat around the table and talked about user needs, user research, our bigger goals together, and our partner took us through a process, really helped us change, I think, as Chris is saying, transform how we think about it. And now we reconvene those groups, and different people, depending on what it is, but we reconvene to work on different aspects of our website, our user journey, etc.
Brilliant. Now, I think I can probably squeeze one or two more in. There's actually a great anonymous question here. Any of you might be able to chip in on. Interesting but not surprising to hear that SEO and content score well. I found it easy to make a case to hire for these as staff roles. So this is clearly someone, I think, from within a charity. But I struggle to get approval for any investment in user experience and ongoing design improvements. So they can get funding for people to come in and do content and SEO, but they can't get funding for user experience experts and in-house design. Have you got any advice for how this person could help make a case for getting funding for these important parts of designing and creating a website experience? Anyone?
Yeah. So, well, look, Mark, I think that one of the most useful things is, in my experience, is users, they're often really blunt and really straight with you, aren't they? And they tell you. And so you've got this amazing piece of content that you've spent ages working on. You know, sometimes we've all done it sometimes even in a vacuum, what have you. But if that page doesn't work, if that, you know, you get them to tell you, it has to be about much more than just those words in isolation. So I think bringing some users in to say, okay, well, here are the things, and we certainly did this. We looked at our brand a while ago. We did this, and they were pretty blunt and tough on the things that they saw and how it impeded their, even though the content was good there, it impeded their journey and their engagement with it. You know, there's no good. You can write as many wonderful blogs, but if it doesn't work from the user's perspective in that bigger sense of the UX and UI, well, what's the point? You're kind of just shouting at a brick wall, aren't you, a bit?
Yeah, and I mean, certainly something that I have found as an external partner that helps a lot is to attach some of those improvements to business critical improvements. So whether that's improving a donation journey through UX and design to ultimately lead to either higher donations or more donations, or indeed through engagement, and showing how a higher engagement amongst supporters can then lead to overall higher income. But it's not just about the fundraising, it's also about better supporting beneficiaries. Are there ways, for example, that a better planned user experience can reduce the number of calls to a phone center, for example, that kind of thing.
Mark, I'd say something else as well, and I'm biased because it's reach, but I'd also say some charities are really, really tiny and there really isn't budget, but there are skills-based volunteers out there who can help you, even just maybe to get on your journey and maybe to make the case. Once people in your organization can then see the impact, you might well go on to work with a partner in a bigger way. But I think that is a way to bring in that expertise. If you're really small and you really, especially at the moment with the impact of COVID, you've really got no money, I think that's a valid route.
Great. I have a feeling that Holly is probably keen to jump in at this point. Are you, Holly?
Hello. Hi. Thank you so much. That was fantastic discussion. I know I could literally leave this running for hours, and I think the questions would keep coming in. I think your last point on skills-based mentoring is really interesting and is potentially something that BIMA could support and help with, given the community. So I think it's definitely one for the Charities Council to follow up. So Anthony, our communities manager, will now share a link to the report. So please do, I think he'll share it in the chat. Please do access the report, download it. Please share the link as well, far and wide. This is, you know, we'd like this to get into as many hands as possible. We will also do an email follow-up. That will obviously have the link again, any of the recommendations, I know any of the links, etc., that the panelists spoke about. And we will also try and answer some of the key questions that we didn't get to. On those questions, I hate to see questions unanswered. So BIMA runs a Slack channel. So if you're a member of BIMA, we will create a Slack channel off the back of this, and you can, if you're not already on that Slack channel, again, email anthony@bima.co.uk and he will add you in, and we will start answering those questions, but also, you know, run the conversation on. And if you, last but not least, if you aren't a member but you would like to be a member, again, give Anthony at Beamer or myself, Holly Hall at Beamer, a shout, and to be part of that conversation. I'm going to volunteer. I'm sure any of the speakers wouldn't mind you contacting them on Twitter as well. Say no quickly if that's not the case. So that's all from me. Thanks, a massive thanks again to Mark and the whole of Pixeled Eggs team, Engine, and then our amazing panelists, Carenza and Lucia, and Chris and Julia. Have a good rest of the day. Thank you.